name tag and your cards are okay.
If anybody, these are just the summary sheets which I emailed previously, so there's no need if you want something in front of you.
Me too. It's a shadow, so.
Phil, do you need or you have it?
Dark shadow.
He's got to go from meeting to meeting all the time.
Dark shadow. Nope, still not coming. We have a quorum, so we can start.
Oh, here.
Right.
Elsie, just let me know when you're ready.
We're in the U in our 1970s style table.
Are we live?
Trying to get you a nice.
Everybody, we're
Oh,
live.
we're live.
We're live, but we're not called to order yet.
It's 6:01.
Okay. This meeting has been called to order with the Open Public Meeting Act. Notice of this meeting was provided to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, and the Highland Park Planet on March 16, 2023, and was posted on the Borough Hall website at www.hpborough.com and on the bulletin board of Borough Hall, 221 South Fifth Avenue in Highland Park, New Jersey, and has remained continuously posted as required by law. Fire exits are to my right and left of council chambers. Please speak into the microphone if you come up to speak. As mayor, I preside over the council meeting and may interrupt, warn, or terminate the participant's statement or participation in the meeting. If the participant's statement does not adhere to the 3 minutes provided to each participant for public comments, or if the statement is disruptive to the orderly conduct of this meeting, is repetitive, and thus is not on topic that is relevant to the borough governing body. Narrator, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Foster,
Yes.
Councilwoman Canavera,
Here.
Councilman George,
Here.
Councilman Hale,
Here.
Councilmember Hirsch,
Councilmember Hirsch.
Council President Hirsch, Councilwoman Kim Chohan,
Here.
Councilman Postelnick,
Yeah, here.
Borough Administrator Hover.
Here.
Okay. And, okay. At the end of the workshop, if you have any questions, you may wish to speak at the public may wish to speak. So we can go into our workshop now. Okay. Now we move into our budget workshop. And I am going to start off with Tara. Or Tara, you want to give us a quick overview?
If you don't mind.
Yes, give us a quick overview, and then I'm going to go around. I'll do the round robin.
And I just want to, you all heard Nerea's rendering of the pledge, but I just want to make sure everybody knows Nerea champions our CFO, recently appointed. So it's our first budget meeting, so be nice. But she's ready, and I'm excited that she's able to join us here. So essentially what I was hoping to cover just real briefly before we get into any questions or anybody's specific, areas of their own buckets that they wanted to kind of reinforce, we put together, we all got a memo, and I did give additional copies here, as well as the summary sheets and the detailed budget worksheets that kind of flow into that. So you all had that. I heard from a couple people with some specific questions, so I wasn't planning on going into the weeds on any one particular area outside of what you guys want to talk about. But as a general summary, and one update I wanted to share was, as if I could I'm just going to kind of jump right into this summary page on the municipal budget worksheet, where we're comparing 22 to 23 across all the areas, municipal, library, school, county, you name it, and kind of how the outlook plays out with the scenario. The assumption in this was that schools were at 2% and county was at 2%. Schools are at 3%. I just got an update literally at end of the week last Friday. So I did run a quick update. I didn't want to, I can give you the comparison. It's not a tremendous impact on the total bottom line as I go through this, but I did want to make you aware, and I believe the mayor received a notice from Superintendent Nicosia about it, and we have the ability to follow up. I do know they did discuss it in their meeting, I believe last night. I will confess to having not watched said meeting yet, so I will make sure to do that and take note of any. I do know there's some areas around. They did get additional state aid this year, which is great, but I also know there are additional expenses, especially coming around with the preschool mandates and things like that. So I don't know exactly where all the changes were in their budget at this point, but we can certainly, while we can request that information, I don't know how much more other than for
Do you have any idea how much state aid, additional state aid they got?
I know it was 34% more than the last time, but I don't know what
they
that dollar value
Right.
of that is, because I don't know what their state aid was before. I just have to look at
But
the
it was a
budget
34% increase in state funding
that they
Yes.
received.
Yes.
Correct.
I believe it's over $1 million.
Okay.
In
Yes.
that ballpark.
Yeah. So,
It is.
Okay.
yeah, so that's I can fully confess. So they had sent us their estimates, and then it turns out the formula was, the way she had broken it down for me, there was a mistake. So I wasn't going to make an amendment, and then she writes me an email, oops, there was a mistake in what I sent you, which made sense because I couldn't figure out, I read Christina's email that it was 3%, and then the number she gave me, it didn't add up, and now I know it was a mistake. So, but just looking at the one I've already sent, and the one you have in front of you, essentially, and the big thing that really stands out in this year over last year is the tremendous increase in total assessed value. And that's due to the reval, which we all knew we were low, because that's why we were ordered to go get a reval, was we were at basically 40% of what we thought market value for our assessment was. So that's why we went through that exercise. So it does make it hard to kind of perfectly compare, because the totals are so different, but you can see here, kind of how it shakes out. The kind of the total bottom line, which we usually jump to in the beginning of these conversations, is what is the impact on the average residential assessment in town? And when you compare 22 to 23, and these are for single family, typically taxpayers, the total average assessment, went from 145,966 to 479,990, which comported very closely to my experience with my own, reval. And while we did see a significant increase in appropriations this year because of the reval and because of how that basically redistributes things more fairly, the average impact to the typical average residential assessment, when you compare 22 to 23, the 2022 bill and this total bill number at the bottom, $12,440.24, now the average bill is $11,618.75. So that the impact on the difference is $821 on a typical assessment. So it's not going to be exactly $821 difference on every tax bill, but in general, we'll see those go down. So I did do a quick calculation before the meeting with the new state numbers, and so just comparing that difference number at the 3% versus the 2%, which is what I had assumed, the difference is $752.42 versus $821. So that just gives you an order of magnitude. And I'll redistribute that sheet. I wanted to double check it before I made a bunch of copies. So in a way, that's not to say we're still raising amounts to be raised by taxes. That is going up this year in all the areas, including the schools and including the borough, due to a lot of the things which we'll go into in our memo and into some of our discussions. But the way it all redistributed this year, hopefully fairly, and that's what the process of reval is intended to do, the impact to the average taxpayer should be an overall decrease in the amount to be paid. So just to let that color your opinion of this budget as we go forward. So I'll stop there. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay.
Is there any possibility, because we know what the percentage was, almost 35% of the school received, that they might recalculate and come back to us with a lower number?
No, they had taken that into the consideration.
Oh, that was
with
a part, because
that includes their, so.
you didn't say that in the many emails that we
Okay,
received.
so
from
no,
you.
as I understand it, the budget numbers they presented last night and the ones that they sent us in advance include that additional state aid. So we can certainly request a special meeting if you want to get a better handle on that. I thought an easy thing to do would just be watch her presentation first to just get our head around it. I didn't get a chance to do that before tonight. I had to get my head in this game first. So we can certainly have a follow-up conversation. However, I don't know that we have any teeth other than if we think there's an area they need to reconsider, we can certainly voice that concern. But
I was just,
yeah. So that state aid number was baked into their budget proposal. So.
I actually really would like to have a memo or a conversation with the schools, because if the state aid went 35% and they're going above a 2% normal 3% increase, I imagine there's a lot of expenses that they have.
Yeah, I'm assuming they absorbed a fairly sizable health insurance bump like we did, other things like that. But we can certainly, they must have had to, she might even be able to send us their slides, which
Right,
would break
if we
it
could-
very
that would be
well.
helpful
That
to
would be
us.
helpful.
Happy
Just
to
to-
request that.
I also believe there's a increase in out-of-district placements for special ed, and that cost quite a
Absolutely.
bit.
So
Right.
but I'm sure she's had to
I'm
break
sure
it down.
she's, right, however she break it down, it'd be helpful to figure
I'll
out.
just-
it would be a nice courtesy share if they shared with us.
Sure. I'm sure she was getting that ready for her meeting, and now it's a lot easier to just like I did
Yeah,
today.
just share,
and
yeah.
now they can get us that.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming there's PowerPoint slides and all that stuff, so we'll get that, and
Thank you.
certainly can follow up with any specific questions that we might have.
Awesome.
So any other questions on this kind of top sheet before we kind of go into the next level of detail?
Guess we're still waiting to hear back from the county and what they're.
Yeah, in past years, they've given me more of a preview. Last year, the CFO was kind of like, they don't want me to do that. I don't know exactly where they are in they're usually a little ahead of us with their budget, so it's probably any day now. I will say they typically don't go much more than 2, like that's not been our experience, but they had expense increases with, I don't know if they self-insure or what with health insurance, so I'll reach back out to the CFO, Miranda, you can remind me, we can do that together, and see if there's any numbers they're willing to share. Last year he said, no, not until I introduce it or whatever, I forget exactly. He said it very nicely, but.
Assessment went down.
Huh?
Last year, their assessment was lower than we expected, so
Yeah,
I doubt that's gonna be the case this year.
yeah, so, and I'm assuming they're experiencing similar, statutory increases. But I'll double check on county too.
But the
Now I can
top
say the
line is
council
that
has
the
requested.
average-
Yes.
But the top line is that the average taxpayer is gonna see a bill of $750 less this year than they did last year.
That's the good news.
That's the good news. I mean, it is a tough budget year,
Right.
but we have some good things working in our favor right now that we can, we're starting if we can migrate into kind of the revenues and the expenses a little bit.
It still is less than that example that went out. It will be less, like, they were going off our current numbers from PPA, that example that was there.
No.
in there. Because they went
This-
off our current
No, this
budget.
I don't know when you say that. I'm really not sure who you're talking about.
PPA, remember we got it and everyone said, yay, my taxes are going down, but they only
They
went
were
off
basing
the,
it on the 2022
yes, the
budget.
2020, yeah,
Correct.
our
So this
current
is-
numbers.
That's a that was
but,
just
yeah.
for illustrative purposes only. But again, similar, not
Yeah,
punchline,
maybe like a
similar,
few hundred or something.
similar
off.
endpoint. It's consistent with what residents received in the mail. This is a real budget as opposed to the 2022 budget again.
yeah.
And so we have some increases that we didn't have last
Why
time.
everyone needed to apply for their anchor benefits.
Say again, Councilman?
That's why everybody needed to apply for their anchor benefits.
Yes,
Okay.
if that's for sure. He mentioned the anchor benefit program as well. So, but yes, so we have, lost my red one there. So to your point, Stephanie, yes, it's not the exact number because also those were your actual values as opposed to this is the average residential assessment, which is the number we use to compare year to year so that we have some basis.
One was
It's the
personal,
best
one
we
was
can do.
borrow.
Exactly. So some things that are, we are utilizing a little more surplus in this budget to try to kind of cushion that blow, so to speak, a little bit. But we feel we can do that pretty comfortably because we did regenerate, and we're sitting in a pretty good position to do that. So we want to do that, but we don't want to overstretch because that's also something the bond rating agencies look at and things like they want to see you're kind of maintaining. And I know this is something, Stephanie, we went through when we did that bond issue. That's one of those things. There's no hard and fast rule, but just having kind of a consistent surplus that you have and regenerate is a good thing. We do think we can pull down a little more than last year because we had some reimbursements from FEMA and some other things that made our regeneration a little stronger than would have been in a normal year. But just be advised, we probably will not have that going into next year. So that's why we're going to probably end at a lower point, but at a healthy point in 2023. Did I get that right, Lorraine? Yes. Okay. So the revenues are based on, basically the rule of thumb there is that you shouldn't be anticipating more than you got in the prior year, because the state, when they look at it, they'll question you leftways and sideways. Sometimes we go a little conservative because we might have had a little better year, but we're not feeling really confident that that's emblematic of a trend of going up, so we'll maybe hedge in between. But in general, you're anticipating, in terms of revenues, what you believe based on your past experience you can reasonably expect to collect. One of the things that I know might be on everybody's mind is, what about the cannabis licensing? That we're in a kind of a weird year because if you recall, applications went out last year. We collected money for those applications, but they're now just getting established with their state licensing. So I don't think we can reasonably, even if all 5 of our applications succeed with the state, they may not be really renewing until next year based on how long. I don't know how long that's all going to take, and we're going to have to think about the renewal cycle a little bit. Similarly, once they're up and running and that revenue, whatever it ends up looking like, comes in from the 2% and all that stuff, until we have a track record on sales and things, we're not going to be able to anticipate that revenue in a real way until we. So I just want to put that out there because I know it's even come up in conversations with when I'm in contract negotiations. They're like, you're going to get all that cannabis money, so you can pay us more money. And I say, well, eventually, hopefully you're right. But right now, we can anticipate these revenues the way they are here. So I just wanted to make those general points. We did see some increases in court, just to point out those things. They're trending up. The tickets are up, and the violations and fees and all that stuff are trending up. So we show that here, although we're not projecting future escalation, but I don't see that slowing down anytime.
And that was like mostly campaigns. That it isn't like
It's
we're like
that, and I think COVID. I think COVID. It was already on a downward trajectory, and then so.
But they did like a lot of them.
Distracted driving,
distracted driving.
Yeah.
It's not like
okay.
I don't want people to
Ticket or
think
ticket or,
like,
yeah,
oh,
those
we're like.
Yeah, and I do think there was just a little bit of a hesitancy on enforcement during the pandemic and things like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
right.
going
so,
on, enforcement is in place now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just an area where we can't predict it, but we can see the trends, and it's at least trending. It's upward, but it's not where it used to be yet. Just to be real, like this is more of a recovery than it is, anything else.
Just to be clear on that, like during the pandemic, people weren't pulling up to people's car and writing tickets for obvious reasons. It's a pandemic, so most of the time they get a warning at a distance. So they was try to cut out contact as much as possible.
Yeah.
So now it's going back to doing your job, so to speak. And you're doing less on one side, but you're going back to your regular functioning as an officer and doing that job. So it's not like we're out here just going, hey, let's write a whole bunch of tickets.
Exactly.
That's not the case, just to be very, very clear.
And so one other thing I wanted to point out, and it did come up in a question prior, was the grants. And just keep in mind, there are grants we get every year. I'm trying to give you a good example where we may not have gotten. We don't get the green light until after the budget's adopted. And the way we handle those, you'll remember, and this is more much for Jason, I think, we do those Chapter 159 resolutions, which basically inserts that into the budget so you can use it. So anything we can get confirmed prior to introduction will get jammed right in here. And we did, I think, we may have picked up one, since I did this. But one of the big differences, it's still a big difference, we use some of our American Rescue Plan Act funds for, I believe, the Woodbridge Avenue road improvements. And so that was 500,000 there. We still have some of those, and I'll be coming back to you guys with a proposal for some capital projects. So that was kind of a one-off, and we'll have a few more of those one-offs in this budget, but I'm not prepared for that for this introduction, just so you understand. So that's just a lot of those. I'm trying to think. Most of these grants, some will come, some will go, but like CDBG, although we did get the word on that one. So, so for example, CDBG, I think we do have it now, and that'll be in there. So certain ones, I am not concerned about any of our usual grants this year. But then there was like the microgrid one. Well, that didn't happen this year, and that's a bigger project, and you know, so there's some of these are one-offs, and they're not renewed every year. I mean, we'll be exploring new grant opportunities where we see them. So I can put together kind of a better summary of. We can't for the budget do it, but I can certainly present a better outlook for you guys as to where I think the grants will be this year.
That would be great.
We just put in for that SAFER grant for firefighters. If we get that,
Yes,
that'll be a chapter
that'd be great.
159 in the budget that we can, so it's not to say if we don't know it now, there's no grant. It's just some of them, it's the best information we had at the time of the budget. I think,
And there's going to be a lot, and there's going to be a lot of money out there too. I mean, I think funding will be,
yeah,
I think our funding options will remain open.
yeah, absolutely, and you know, we experimented with a grant writer for the SAFER grant, and we're gonna be looking at those things. But again, I don't want you to be dismayed when you see down by $500,000 in grants. It's because mainly that
We're getting
American
some-
Rescue Plan one,
Yeah.
and that was kind of a one-off thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, those are the main highlights. I think was gonna touch on. Does anybody have any questions on revenues that I maybe didn't cover? And then we can jump into the approps where we get into more bucket type discussions.
Oh, I had a question.
Good.
Just because you mentioned the grant writing, I'm curious if there's possibly money available to hire someone part-time on some kind of like basis. That's really possible.
Well, what I'll tell you, for grant writing, what I'll tell you is these grant writer, there's a lot of like these. It would probably be hard to keep somebody busy on a part-time basis, but certainly a consultant basis. And that's what
And a
this,
shared service basis.
or a shared service.
That's what we're
if
looking
we
at.
got,
That's what
but
we've done.
I will caution you all. There's a limited capacity of the number of
Sure,
projects
of course with me.
that the staff can implement. So we can, so we have to think also realistically. Capital projects, 100%. We'll roll those out as we get the money. But, if there are kind of newfangled ideas, I'm not saying I'm not supportive, but then we might have to find a person not only to write the grant, but to do the project. So if it doesn't fit neatly into any of our, so that's one of those things, because Em and I are hitting the limits of, I've got the river trail, I've got this, and we're dividing the NPP, and these are all great things.
That's going to be a part of a later conversation.
But that's a later, so I
Yeah.
think it's a really good thought, and if anybody knows of a town, because I love the shared idea, who has a good
Yeah.
grant writer, but a lot of the times it's not as much the grant as either the idea or the who's going to do it. If we got it. So I think these are all, I want to snag as much money as we can responsibly, because we also want to have a track record of
And then as
following
I
through
was
with what we
told,
say we're going to do.
Yeah.
and then I was told over and over and over and over again how long these grants are, even although we're sharing services one town for their grant writer, it consumes
Well, and
a lot of
it's still
time.
work for staff. I mean, we just worked with the SAFER grant people.
Right.
What, do you think they just figured it out? There was an email to me and Emma, I need these answers, I need background. Now, they did the flowery essay, which was great. I would definitely say we liked the experience. So, but the nice thing about that grant, if we get it, we're hiring somebody or two people. That's an easy implement.
That's
That's
We
a
have
nice
to build
and easy.
capacity.
We
Right,
have
right.
we're building capacity, and then maybe
We have
those
to build
people can write
capacity.
some grants.
May I just want to echo what Terry just said. Thank you, Terry. I think I agree 1,000% with you on that. I think Emma has really, exhibited some real investment in shaking down a lot of these things, and also overseeing their implementation. I just wanted to second the fact that it's capacity we really need to allocate.
And we have some ideas for that. So it's not like I'm saying, oh no, this is, so therefore shut you down, no new grants. but I just want
No,
to
no.
make that point because, you know, that's, we're kind of up to a limit, you know, I'm more and more saying it in my emails to, you know, boards and commissions, I'm like, if you want to go for that grant, great, but you got to do the grant. You know what I mean? Like, it's got to be your project and we'll help you, you know? So, but I definitely think for some of these more onerous FEMA-ish type grants that are just a pain in the butt to put together, there's a real possibility for a grant writer either as a consultant, on an ad hoc basis, or as a shared, you know, I'm open, but I want to know the qualities there.
Metuchen uses millennial as their.
I love it. I'll talk to the BA there, Melissa, and say who their person is over there. I'd like to talk to them. Because I wouldn't mind our next grant trying a different one, just see how it goes. You know?
Because we use one for this one.
They're
so-
pretty happy with millennials, so just as a throw it out there.
Oh, that's what they use as a consultant.
There's a group
The
called
grant-
Millennium. They do
right.
Millennium Strategies or something. I'm
Oh,
familiar.
oh,
They're
oh.
one of the big ones. This one we went with CGP&H just because we kind of knew them from other projects, and they were able to commit to doing it quick because we don't have a big lead time. But there are other fish in the sea, and I think and there may be ones that are better for public safety grants and some that are better for touchy-feely grants over here. You know what I mean? Like, and that's something we can learn as we go.
We don't need to talk about who right now.
Okay.
About who?
About who?
Huh? What is it?
It's not.
Okay.
We don't talk about the individual companies right now, he's saying. We
Ah,
can
gotcha.
discuss that
That's a
offline.
fair point. So yeah, I think we're open. Any other thoughts on the revenue side of the equation?
Our revenue? Anything?
And just a
Stephanie?
reminder, like, you know, the revenues and grants, it's like offsets, usually independent expenditures beyond, you know, we're lucky that Kim in Community Services has grants that actually offset salaries of existing staff. But by and large, these grants, they're in, they're out. You know, they're not really helping with the general operations. They do because they do things for our town, but you know, certain ones really do, like the CDBG, we offset some of the transportation driver and all that kind of stuff. So I've beaten that dead problem.
Yes.
Are we still losing money on people registering their cats?
What?
I'm not prepared to answer that question. That's probably a clerk's office question, which I could follow up with you on.
What's the question? Are we still losing money on having an ordinance where people are supposed to register their cats?
I'm sure. I can look into that for you and get
That,
back to you though.
doesn't that go in that, where all the license, marriage and all that, like vital? Isn't that?
It doesn't go into vital,
That doesn't
definitely.
It goes under, Noria, you would know which of these revenue.
Can we make a note on that and
Yeah.
follow up on that
Yeah.
tomorrow?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's a line item in here. Should be here.
It's probably in either fees,
Yeah.
Because don't
fees
we
and
have-
permits or.
Yeah.
one
Yeah,
of the
that's
other
what I was
ones.
looking at.
Um,
Permits, and that is,
yeah.
Yes.
So we'll get back to you on that one. We didn't look at that this year. We could maybe do a look back. So in terms of appropriations, these are
Right.
gathered in terms of the general bucket areas of your own areas of responsibility. And Elsie, I'll defer to you how you want to go through this.
I think we should go through the ones that, well, maybe we should run through everything. I was gonna say the ones that we've had the biggest increase in.
Well, I have my little annotations on the side that were basically the basis of the memo I sent. I tried to basically follow this in order, so if you were looking at my memo and looking at this summary page, you could kind of see where the highlights were.
Right.
And what I would encourage you got to look at two columns, budget change in dollars, okay, that second to last column, but then percent change, and you got to juggle the two. So they're both interesting for their own reasons. So sometimes it looks like this huge percent change, but it's like $3,000. So
Right.
it might be important when it's a board or a commission, but in the scheme of, you know, public works, it's a drop in the bucket.
Or animal control, that's the one I really want to go through.
Right, so we could, you know, administration, we could start with that. There are a lot of the big
Okay.
ones in that bucket, and those are under you and me, and I'm probably the best prepared to
Yes, so
speak
let's
to
start
some
with
of those.
admin.
So the biggest highlights there are legal. That's basically gearing up for trial on JSM v. Highland Park. More or less, that's what that, plus any other weirdness that comes our way, which, you know, Botown v. Highland Park, you know, we have these things that happen, and they happen more increasing, so we gotta have enough budget to land on those. Sorry, I should have brought my ruler. Library's up, and maybe I'll defer to Phil to kind of speak to some of that. The initial request was much higher. I did do some editing based on how much was actually expended in prior years, but also taking into consideration, I know they're finally up to full staffing, versus I know we had done a kind of a COVID level staffing period. So I didn't want to slice too deep, but Phil can maybe speak to that one separately. So
Phil, you
So,
want to
so
give us a little bit
do
of
you want me to,
update?
can I finish the other ones and we can kind of
Okay,
come back
okay.
to library?
All
Because
right,
I
so
know that can kind
okay, all right.
of suck the air out
Yeah,
of the room.
do the general introduction.
And then we can maybe go double back on those
Yes.
areas. The liability insurance is up 16%. I declared it the year of risk management. You may not be aware of this, but that's why you have to do those trainings. And by the way, you have about a week and a half to get them done for the
And
ones
most of
due
you
at the end of
have
the month.
not done that.
So please,
I
please,
did mine.
if you did yours, thank you.
You did
No,
all of
that one.
Oh,
No, there is online.
No.
Oh,
There's-
no.
There's more
No.
online.
There's several
So
that
much
you
more.
have to take.
I will resend it out.
Please.
It
No,
was sent-
because it helps to help with all of this.
It
Our
is-
budget.
It was like the
That was the
discrimination.
premium.
Yes,
and all of those.
harassment, discrimination, cybersecurity.
Yes, there's a whole stuff.
all that stuff.
Yeah,
That's why I kept on saying
I
to
will
Matt,
mention,
please remind the
if you
council
take the
members.
same,
I handed in all my things saying I
did, but I
completed them.
haven't been notified.
No, but
of
every
the
time you
digital.
complete one, there's another one that
Sure.
pops
no,
up.
these are the same trainings, but if you want, I'll tell you who still
No,
owes
I
what.
understand.
Yeah,
yeah, that would help.
okay.
Yeah, I thought it
We
was
did
just
do,
one.
we did do the session.
Yeah, we did that.
No, but it's
one.
not just one.
There was like 6 of
Okay,
them.
okay.
He was mistaken. It's
Okay.
not just
I will get an update, no big
You
deal, you have
misspoke.
plenty of time, they're 20 minutes
It
at a shot.
wasn't, no, we'll have
Yeah,
it
'cause
covered.
I didn't even mean to take us down that road, I apologize. The reality is, we have
council members, we
increased
have
costs.
responsibilities.
Our numbers across several areas were not favorable, and so some of the things we can do are trainings and things to show the JIF we're taking it seriously, and they will take our performance on these trainings into advisement when they look at our new premium for next year, but the premiums are up, and we had, and that is the bottom line. That's where that number, we are in a 3-year, we're in year 2 of a 3-year, so we didn't have the option to shop. This is just one of those things. So we're gonna work really hard this year to improve our performance. We have a lot of protocols. Our employee safety meetings are much more robust. We're really doubling down as staff, but I want you to know that this was a major unexpected increase. And we worked hard because they were trying to really change our deductibles, and we were able to kind of negotiate that back down, but that was something that was gonna really hurt, especially for workers' comp and some of these other things. So that's something that is ongoing, but it was a major increase this year, 68,000 plus. The group insurance, which is the health insurance primarily, it also includes the line for eye and whatever else. Eye? Is that it? Eye and dental. But dental was up by about 4%, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to what we pay for the health insurance premiums. So this number, this increase is 12.6%. Note that the actual increase was more closer to 24%, but we had some cushion in that line from previous years that we were able to kind of run our numbers and buffer this a little bit. We won't have that moving forward. So this number is basically us absorbing that major premium increase from the state health benefits plan program. The last item I flagged, and to say there's not other interesting things, is PFRS, that's the pension program for police and fire. The statutory amount, the bill went up by $135,000. So that's just, there's nothing I can do about that. So that is what it is. So those were kind of in the min bucket, the big ones. You can see, Social Security is up a little bit, but that's in part due to some of the salary and wage contractual stuff, so that has to dial upwards as salaries go up. But dollar value isn't tremendous in the big scheme of the budget. So that's all I had on admin. Elsie, if you wanted to say anything else, or we could-
I just need for everyone to take those classes. We need to, whatever percentage that we can come down with the JIF, it's critically important that we get there. And it's a protection for all of us as well.
It does also make us, easier to defend in the case that we are sued for something. But that's, I don't want to give you any illusion, we all take the training and that number goes down by $50,000.
No, but it's
not
gonna
that.
help. Every little, if you get down to a couple of percentage, it's gonna help.
Yeah.
So strongly encourage everyone to take it and just
Mhm.
redo it, resend. Because if you did one before, it'll tell you took the class already, so you don't have to redo it. Because I took all of mine.
Council, I will send around notices as soon as possible.
Matt, I'll get you what you need, or I don't know.
Why did he sound like
Thank you,
Darth
Terry.
Vader?
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. It does give you, you have a kind of a boomy voice in this
Right.
speakerphone, and you should know.
Yeah.
It gives you a gravitas.
You sound like James Earl Jones.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
This is not the salary increase.
I am coming to get you.
I should have tried that in my contract negotiations. I didn't think of it, Phil. So any other, should we jump into
No,
finance?
just anybody else. Anybody else have any questions on this? On the admin portion? All right, yeah, we should jump into finance.
Finance is pretty straightforward. The major increase I hesitate to use the word major. We're in a transition year on finance between Lori and Nerea being here. So for the time being, we still have Lori as our director of finance and Nerea now as our CFO. Lori's going to stick around for a little while to help us through the budget period, but is more and more kind of transitioning to Nerea. So what we've got is basically a half a year of Lori roughly, and I've also budgeted, because she's our QPA, our qualified purchasing agent, which we don't want to lose. So we'll probably keep our ties into her at least through the end of the year until we figure out an alternative for that. So that's why it's not like, oh, you jacked up everybody. We had some promotions, and we have also Lori still on board. So that's just what's going on there. That's the main highlight in that area.
And then is the for the reval is in finance too, but that was
In a way, but where you see the cost of that is under deferred charges.
Yeah.
That's in the green area after boards and commissions. You'll see that on page 5 of the packet you have, we're up by 80,000 under deferred charges. The 14 we were paying a year for 5 years was for the master plan. Now we're going to be paying $80,000 for, I believe, 5 years for the reval. So we're taking the hit this year. Now next year it won't feel so bad, but in terms of the percentages, it's a big one that we knew we were going to have to assume in order to comply with this order. So that's a really important point. Yeah. So that's not in the finance. It's finance related, but it's one of those it's kind of its own thing in the budget. So I kind of call it out separately.
Anything, Stephanie, that you want to jump in with?
No, I think it was mostly that, and then the bond principal stuff is there.
That's basically that's the debt payments.
Yeah.
Gotta pay the bills.
Yeah, those sections are just towards the bottom of page 5, capital improvement and debt.
Oh, we're not there yet.
Yeah, but that's in her
But
bucket.
that's in
That's
okay, you're right.
so I didn't think about that. I could have maybe moved them up. I kept them segregated more for how the budget document flows. But yeah, you'll see bond principles up, but there's bond interest payments are down, and so is the MCIA way down. So that whole area is more or less a wash.
Are we putting in here this year for like a reval maintenance program or something?
Not this year, but that'll be
Next
something
year.
we don't need it this year because
Yeah,
we have
we have
the as we go through any tax appeals or anything like that, the PPA is still on the hook as part of their contract that we've already bought.
Oh, okay.
They're there to kind of represent and work with us through any appeals that come through. But Tom is going to have a proposal for us for
that's
a
good.
maintenance program starting probably next year or the year after. I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. That's good.
So I'll have more information on that later. So that's the finance bucket. Economic development and planning. What's in here is essentially normal, pretty much situation normal. Slight increase in OE for economic development, which will help us with how we're structuring the Main Street contribution, and maybe Matt can speak to that later about what we're thinking there. Because we are going to need to introduce the Main Street budget in parallel with our budget, so that basically when we're all adopted, we can get our tax rate certified and get our bills out the door. So that'll kind of pull
I
it
can talk
different.
about that anytime.
Yeah, but I'll defer to you guys if, I think maybe, you know. I don't
You
know.
want to share it?
Whatever you, if you want to.
Or do you want to get through it and?
You want to go through?
You want to go, let's go through it. Which way are you comfortable? Which way is still fresh in your head?
I can do either way. Why don't we go through the
I
regular
would,
budget?
I think we're.
And we'll go through this and then we'll come back to you.
There's not, the only other thing I'd highlight on here, you'll see some changes in salary and wages between planning board and board of adjustment and code enforcement. And if you recall, we hired Tanya Varela, who's now been doing the planning and zoning board, clerking with Jen's tutelage. And that was something Jen did as a kind of a separate title previously. And just instead of having to charge it to 3 different accounts, we just decided have code enforcement's budget. We're just charging code enforcement, and we reduced planning and zoning by the same amount. So we're no longer charging any of Tanya's salary to those lines and just charging to code because it just seemed like more mechanics than was really appropriate. But in essence, it's no difference in terms of total salary and wages. If anything, it might be a little less based on final salary negotiations.
Terry, the only thing I would maybe just explain real quickly
Sure.
what the economic development OE is, that the 138.
What goes into that?
What goes into that?
Sure.
I mean,
Essentially, that's what we charge. The salary and wages is basically my redevelopment stipend. Basically, that's me. And then the OE is I charge. So you asked a bigger question, you probably wanted, but the essentially redevelopment related planning services that aren't charged to our capital ordinance that we already have. Some of the things we're doing are eligible for that, some aren't. So certainly what's in there are finishing up the Cleveland Ave and Upper Raritan plans because that was actually out of the 2021 budget and we can no longer charge the 2021 budget. So I'm working on getting LRK to give me an updated proposal to basically finish those out. I put in basically the difference between what we already paid and what was remaining. It may go up a little bit because their salaries might have gone up a little, but essentially those kinds of projects, the contribution that we make annually to Main Street, which Matt can talk more, in the past it's been $25,000. We're contemplating an increase in that. So those, we don't always expend it, but in the past things we've talked about were kind of a PR kit, something like that, and that's something we could certainly look at. But essentially this is to support our economic development activities, the professionals essentially, and like if we needed another parking study, that would be something we could charge to this budget. Those are, so I like to have a little extra because each year we're not sure exactly this expertise we might need, but that's essentially what we're using it for.
Yeah, I just thought it was important people knew that that's just the professional side of getting economic development done comes out of the OE primarily from that.
Right.
So we hire LRK and the planners and
you can
folks
see,
that
I think in my sheet there, it kind of says these
if you
are
go
the
into
kinds of
the
stuff.
detailed budget, it breaks it down.
Yeah.
Right.
And they're just estimates. It's not like a hard and fast, it's this many dollars for that.
Right.
And each of those projects, unless it's general, like Joe Bauman general, the Upper Raritan, Cleveland Ave, those would be resolutions you would basically award those contracts, and then we book that purchase order against that line. So you'll have a chance to weigh in on how we spend those dollars as the year goes through.
Why the hell animal control increased $10,000?
That's why I want to get to that.
And that's a share, right?
It's
Yes.
a shared service with Edison.
Yes.
I asked the same question. Scott's kind of the point
I kinda
person
freaked out when I saw
on that.
it.
It's under his bucket, and it's because they basically woke up and smelled the coffee that they've been lowballing us for a long time. So
Everybody else is more expensive.
we don't have another option.
But there's like a whole bunch of towns that
Yeah.
that are in that shared service. It's not just us and
Right. I don't, if you want to push back on it, we can, but let me tell you, we don't, I'm on my manager's listserv. Towns are desperate looking for shared animal control. It is hard to cover. Like, are we gonna, who else has an,
We had New Brunswick and
has
Venus
a hospital, that, or what do you call it, the shelter? Like, so they kind of have this
Yeah.
They have the animal shelter that,
So, If the
abuse
mayor
animals
wants to
in
call
the-
the mayor and have a discussion,
Same on the home.
Well, that's part of
We had a conversation. Like,
$10,000?
But I will say, we're pretty busy. I talked to Scott. It's not like they don't get calls.
Yeah.
And I don't only have a lot of options.
Yeah.
there's not much because we left New Brunswick a
So,
long time ago.
other
so
than
we
just
did
a
not
hissy
hear
fit,
about
I'm
it.
not
So
sure
it's
what we
a-
can do about it.
You remember that?
We switched from New Brunswick because we weren't getting service for a lot
Exactly.
of money.
They
And
wouldn't come out. They
Edison
would
made
never
a
show.
mistake and lowballed us.
They
and
did.
they never-
Because they wanted the contract.
They wanted the contract to say we have Highland Park, and they thought we were gonna do a lot of deer management, which would bring in money for them. And that never materialized. And they did finally wake up, because they increased 1 or 2 other towns as well.
They're trying to make this, I think, a moneymaker though. Because they
Well,
have
let
a
me tell
lot
you.
of time.
Well, they're
Can I tell you, though?
They're financing an
No,
animal
Towns don't
shelter.
get into shared services
Yes.
to lose money. You know, they gotta cover their costs. That's part of the
Right.
advantage. for them.
Yeah.
And we all get, like with the IT, hopefully, we all get
The
a
service
better
that we
service than we would have otherwise gotten without each other.
They also expanded
You know.
their shelter, and it's
And
an
they have more
expensive service.
facilities than, they
I have
have
to
a lot,
tell
they
you,
have more
The
capability
shelter
than
is
the other
much
towns
nicer
around
than
us,
it used
yes.
to be.
Oh,
Because I
yeah,
have a
they
doctor's
did.
They're
test
being
from there.
held
It's
at
night
a
and
higher
day.
standards now, so it's not
So,
like we
so,
used to
so they just said like, oh, increase whatever.
They sent us a new bill. That is the extent of the conversation.
Period.
That is it.
That's
So if that's something that's
And it's
important to
take-
you, I'll say I would
take
think
it or
it's,
leave it.
it's I don't know.
They do. They
Don't
do
look at
show up.
the 85%,
Oh, yeah.
look at the
New
number.
Brunswick
where
Now
it
still,
comes
Never
from.
did.
At the block party on your street, they came for a parakeet or something.
They did. They came
crazy.
during the block party.
And they came, I know my neighborhood, we had possums running all over, and they came and they got all of them. They set the
New
trap, they
Brunswick,
came back, they
we
picked
had a
them up,
skunk problem
and they wouldn't go.
along South Second in the Johnson block. They dropped a trap off in my front yard, and that's the only time we ever saw them.
This guy, they actually came
No,
out
we have
several
to-
times and
we have to
collected
use
them
a
and
very large
did
truck
what they do, and
truck for
that was it.
Yeah.
So,
But
but
that's a
if
big
you
increase. I have
guys
the
want
same
me to
reaction.
go back to them, because when I saw the increase, I thought it was like, whoa,
Pick your battles.
$10,000, and I thought that might not be the best way to use my time to argue with them for something
Pick
that
your battles.
every day you see on the news, these shelters who are getting in trouble. We are not there. Look at what happened in Woodbridge and a bunch of other towns around the state
That's right.
about animals being abused, and we have a service that is not the issue. I don't think we need to go argue with them about that.
I agree.
I agree.
Me too.
We need Edison for a lot more than.
And that's what I'm saying.
I'm
I personally,
fighting
I
about
think
something
like
else.
5 other topics to talk to you
We'll
about
talk
first.
about.
Yeah, I know.
Stormwater, like fill our project.
I want to use their crack filler to extend our.
You want to use their crack one?
Asphalt.
Asphalt crack.
Oh, okay.
They have the equipment, so does East Brunswick, but theirs is closer.
So, anywho.
So they have equipment, no. They have equipment that you would like to use for our town?
We have to pay them to do it.
Oh.
Yeah, we have to pay them, but and
We've talked to not Piscataway, East
East
Brunswick,
Brunswick.
and
We
the
could-
problem is, it's hard to get them to give you a number. Because you can't just say, okay, whatever you want to charge us,
Right.
we'll do. And they are short-staffed too.
they are.
And so they
And
may
one of
not
the-
be able to deploy.
One of the
their-
problems, we have to use 2 of their crew who are licensed to operate. But it's still worth it when you look at the amount of time it saves in paving.
So that's a better conversation for you
That's
to
a
have
better
with Edison
conversation.
Mayor now.
Agreed.
So that's the conversation I'll be willing to have with Sam.
Agreed.
Okay.
Okay. So just send me some notes of.
Yeah, I took a note.
Okay.
I'm writing pick battle.
Exactly.
Crack your battles.
Public safety is next, if we're going back to the economic development and planning, and there. Police salary and wages is kind of the highlight on that.
Yeah.
It's 5.7% up. Keep in mind, they have a fairly aggressive salary guide. This number also assumes some negotiations that I'm still in the middle of for incentivizing some of the newer officers to stick around. Those of you who have been doing the interviewing for the new officers, we're having, some have been bad fits, so it's not a loss, but I've been hearing from the chief, I know Elsie and Phil have been hearing from the chief, and from just senior staff members over there. It's exhausting. We get all these people on board and then we lose them to somebody. So this is supposed to help I can't say it's gonna be a perfect solution, but at least gives the folks
It will
who
give us
got
at
a
least
reason to
3
stay.
years.
You
And
know,
it'll
they'll
give us
never
over
get
that
this one.
3-year period.
So it's a very strong proposal that's built into here. But it's a combination of, there would have been more than a 2% there anyway based on how those guides work, but it's even more because of some of the things we're trying to do in this contract. So that's not settled yet, but I wanted to make sure I could at least afford what I was trying to put together. And so this is what that number looks like.
Just to add to that, that's critical because my entire time at public safety is that we bring them in
We train them.
and we train them, and as soon as they're ready, you know, here comes another town that's offering $50,000 more.
It's
Or somebody goes to the academy and we have our people up there and they're gone. And let me be very clear, minority officers are top pickings for everybody. And so when it comes to when you have people trained and ready to, and they have experience, it's like Highland Park is a training ground. And we lose our minority officers when people are coming with $50,000, $60,000 more. They have young families and they're trying to buy houses and take care of their families and they're going to go that route. So I want to be very clear because I've had conversations with people say, how come we don't have any minority officers? We are a small town, we have a small budget, and we have to work within the budget that we have. And if I'm a young person starting a family and somebody offered me to $50,000 to $60,000 more, bye.
And I will say in this number, in addition to this, the chief has worked really hard with our labor attorney on some, when we do hire, some clauses about if you accept this offer, you're withdrawing your name for consideration, things like that. I know some of the, the hiring committee folks
Yes,
know about,
yes.
but we're trying, because it's, I mean, the amount of, forget about our time interviewing, 30 minutes here and there, onboarding, background checks, field training, all
It's a
that stuff,
tremendous
and then
amount of time.
flush a year and a half later, and so we're trying to be responsibly aggressive here. It's not, I don't think we're giving away the farm. I think we're now very competitive in our area, but you're still gonna wanna have to work in a town like Highland Park. And, I can't make somebody who wants to go in a more fast-paced environment than here, but we think this is a good, so the chapter is not closed on that negotiation, but I at least wanted to make sure, as I was in negotiations, I could even deliver upon what I think is probably our best bet right now,
The reality is that we have to find a way to attract talent.
We do, we have to,
And
and a large part of
And
it,
to keep them for a little
And we
bit
have some
over
really
3 years,
good officers are kind of in the earlier stages and kind of gives them a little bit of a boost and a feeling like they want to stick. It just kind of,
in talking to them on the street, even in the middle of the night, I try to make an effort, and one of the things that is keeping them around is the good attitude and in upper management to make this a more community-oriented, to orient more towards young them, giving them extra trainings, which is like, it's an extra to them. But in the budget numbers too, it's bottom loading. It's bottom loading a lot to make that, those early steps more beneficial to a new officer.
Absolutely.
But what we're getting a lot of is officers who are already in another department or in corrections somewhere. A lot of them are corrections officers. But show you how bad it was. We had one round of 3 good candidates scheduled for interview. They all, within 24 hours of the interview, accepted other jobs. Literally.
well, they take our offer and throw it in another
Yeah, well,
place's
of
face.
course they do that, which is one of the reasons why we say you withdraw from anybody else if we make you the offer. But we've interviewed, I think, 10 officers for 3 positions since January. That's how
With more to
tough
come,
it is.
right?
More to
Yeah,
come.
there's more to come, there's more to come.
27th, we have 3 more
Yeah, this is to fill the
to fill
Hamel
infill the
vacancy,
gap.
basically.
Yeah, and we can talk about it more, but that large number also represents infill for requests for additional officers, but we'll talk.
No, there's no new hire in there.
I know, it's
Okay.
it's listed in here, but it's not.
No, I talked to the chief, I said,
Yeah.
there's no way we can add to your table of organization maintenance.
Yeah, I
Additional
spoke with him.
and do these contracts. And
Yeah.
so he said, I'll happily take if you can make that contract, that'll be very good for the department.
Yeah, I spoke to him, I was gonna bring that, I spoke to him
Thanks
today,
for
we
reaching
had a meeting on budget, and he said,
Yeah.
what there is that it's infill, and then because of the upward movement because of a retirement at the upper level or downfilling in other positions. And that saves us a little bit of money.
Yeah, but somebody else is gonna get the lieutenant positions, so, but,
It's a challenge.
it's a challenge, but that's the big headline. The other one I just would mention, I mentioned earlier, we went after that SAFER grant for
Right.
salary and wages for fire.
Right.
We will know, I think, Emma told me August, but I'm not, don't quote me on that. But it's kind of a hedge number. I didn't want to be caught flat-footed without the ability to do some additional hiring this year, either some combination of an additional full-time or potentially a full-time and a part-time director. And so it's a little bit of a hedge, like something we would do towards the end of the year. So I didn't budget a full year of that. My hope is we get the SAFER grant and then we can regroup and figure out exactly how, and just to be clear, the SAFER grant is more for a firefighter, not a manager. So we could then relook at our budget in light of if we do get the SAFER grant, then maybe we could get a manager. Because I do think, and this is not a new recommendation, we do need that person. It's just finding that person isn't easy. And what I do think we need more than anything first is bodies responding to fires, people on duty. So that's what this budget's meant to do. But I'm gonna not quickly do that. I wanna wait and see how the SAFER grant pans out. But then if that doesn't go through, I think we're gonna have to go ahead and hire another full-time, at least this year. So that's the 4.4% in under fire. I didn't have anything else I was gonna speak to under public safety, Phil, unless you have any thoughts.
No.
Reckonards is, Kim's got it under control. This is her, this is one of those ones. I told Jason he was lucky when he inherited this bucket because it's in good hands.
Yes.
What I'd remind you is there's a whole other recreational trust fund that basically when we collect fees and things, that money goes into that pot of money. So some of our expenditures, the majority of our expenditures for programs and things are charged there. We do charge some day-to-day stuff and salaries and wages to municipal budget. So that's something, Jason, I've already talked to Kim about getting a handle on that bigger picture and kind of bringing you in. But we do track income and expenses on both sides, but this is just our operating municipal budget, amounts to be raised for tax purposes. But it is a bigger story to tell in terms of, where the money goes to pay for these various things. And Kim has done a great job with, once again, securing some, for the aging side of things, grant funding to offset a number of the salaries. So if you look at those sheets, you'll see that reflected there.
Terry, I know we did a slight increase when I had this bucket, that was a while ago.
In what, sorry?
And just like some of the programs there.
We did another tinker, I think,
In the fee structure,
in
right?
this year.
Oh, we
It
did.
was a minor
The fee structure,
tinker, again, and I should report it, there was no, she said there's been absolutely not a peep about it. Like,
Yeah, because we're still
very
fairly
low compared to our
Yeah,
neighboring,
yeah.
and we didn't touch our discounted for free and reduced families and special and needs-based families. So we didn't tinker with that pricing. We really just focused on regular fees.
This year or last year?
I think we did it in January.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's really, okay, yeah.
I'm not 100% sure, but I know Matt. I think we talked about that if memory serves. But it's so minor. It was not a it was a massage. It was not a major overhaul. But she is gonna.
I can, and I'm sorry, I can answer the questions on that since that was in my area, but it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Go back to your 2022 sheets. Right here.
Yeah, you can kind of look
Yeah,
at
that's
that.
what-
But that's not
No, but if you
on
look, you take a
here,
look,
right?
just take a look at the increases that happened here.
But this is salary, yeah.
But that with the rec fees
that's in
wouldn't
the
be
trust.
reflected in here.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're
So-
whatever they collect and
But
stuff.
we're supporting more or less all the salaries. Are we now, Nerea, out of the municipal budget, not in rec? Yeah, not a lot of money. In the past, we had to hit the rec fees a little more to offset salaries, but we're trying to
Yeah.
have that money available to support programming and paying vendors to provide the programming and stuff like that. So that's just something that's ongoing. And Jason, I don't know if
May I
you
just say that, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. Councilman Costello, I apologize. I'm trying to speak to you before.
It's quite all right, Councilman Hirsch. Please go ahead. You can go first.
But it's a pretty uneventful 1% and 2% down the line there, so we're not talking about anything earth-shattering. And the only reason there's no teen center OE, we do charge, we have a trust account for teen center that we've been utilizing for that as well. It's a kind of a subset of that rec trust that was put aside for before the teen center was up and running. But we've been very frugal about that, and we've been milking it, but the day will come when that's gone. And that's the other reason we want to build the rec trust back up, so that we have it to offset all the programs, including the teen center.
I didn't have any questions. I mean, it all looks.
It's this was a pretty uneventful year for your bucket, fortunately.
Yeah,
And
no,
then,
I appreciate
and then
that.
even the salary and wages from the team, some of that is picked up by the
It's offset,
some of that,
CDBG.
some of that
And
salary.
I don't even think
is
I
in there.
included that here because
Yeah.
it wasn't confirmed at the time. But
But
yeah,
that's
so that
in
we
there.
do have some, we
That's-
are being creative about it's great now that really the teen center with Kim's new role, which isn't even new anymore, everybody still think of it as a new role, as the director, and Ashton reporting to her, it's kind of, she's being creative with grants and things like that, and trying to figure out how to support those programs beyond whatever Ashton's already been doing.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add to that, just to echo the praise to Kim, I had a long sit down with her just a week ago and went over all of the programming that's operating underneath her.
It's
and
mind-blowing,
really,
isn't
it is
She's
mind-blowing.
awesome.
I was going to say, like,
Yeah.
like super impressive. But yeah, it
She's
was,
awesome.
so yeah, easy job for me, but
Okay.
looks good.
Let's see, Public Works.
That's the big one.
It's a big budget. The main changes that I'd highlight, there's a slight uptick on salary and wages, which again, the salary guides in when you're in the steps in the salary guide for these are union positions, are more than 2% very often. So you can't just go, why are you more than 2%? Because that's a negotiated thing. I will also say, we had been trying to hire a position for a long time there, and so we finally did towards the end of the year. So if you looked at the actuals and were like, why didn't we spend it all? It was we were trying to hire. So now we have. So this is what we need to run existing positions that we've already approved. So we had approved an additional hire last year, so that's not in this budget. The other big change, building and ground OE. We are on a new custodial contract. We're still ironing out the kinks. It does cost us more, but we really didn't have a better alternative, and we're going to work really hard to make sure it performs better than the previous. We are having it's just started as of March, so give us a little time to get it under control, but we're working on implementing the contract. The other things, we just know we have some building upgrades we're going to need to take on in some of our buildings, and I just didn't want to, like the DPW bathrooms, things like that.
All the bathrooms in the borough.
Well, don't get excited, Elsie, that's not in here.
All the bathrooms there.
So that's no, but we are going to try to get them a more deep clean and some things to get them a little spiffier. We have a dream to do the ones over at the community center, but that will be a capital project. This is more maintenance and catch up, because we're just seeing those costs going up anyway. The writing's on the wall there.
I think the custodial contract, I think at one time we were doing something with the schools.
We were.
Right?
They broke off their agreement with Italian. I don't know what they're doing now. They went out to bid. They asked us if we wanted in, and I'll tell you, it was not tenable to stay. It was a really tough position to be in. This is one of those, the good and the bad of shared arrangements. So it was their contract. But we were just like this thing at the bottom, like you have to do these buildings too. And I had no way to really advocate other than going to the school and complain and complain and complain. So we ended up getting a little bit of a credit on kind of the last year of the non-results we were getting. But when they asked us if we went, and this is something I did talk with Gail about, it was before Elsie's time as mayor, I was like, Gail, we can't stay in this. It's not working. It's not going to even save us money in the future, and they're advocating our terms. Like now we're having problems, and it's our contract, and we're gonna walk if we don't like what we're
Yeah,
getting.
yeah.
They wanted us to leave. We were a problem for them. And so we made the decision, we went with Accesses, I'm spelled weird, Accesses NJ, which is a state contract agency. They work with special needs folks throughout we got really great recommendations. We're having some challenges with the team we have here now, what we think we're gonna resolve them, and we're just meeting on it today. That's only a small part of that number. I don't wanna say our custodial went up 70 grand. I think
Yeah,
it's closer
what-
to
that's
35 grand. Okay.
Oh, okay,
Okay,
okay.
the other stuff in there is basically hedging against some updates that we need to do on some of our buildings and some of our other matters. The truth is, things like, we still own 101 Raritan, and it looks like an eyesore, so we're gonna paint it. You know, stuff like that, that's in there. It's not big bucks, but it all starts to add up, and I wanted to make sure we had enough, because if we're gonna start talking about property maintenance downtown, well, guess what?
We have to maintain
We have to
our
maintain our own property, so that's on my mind as well. So those are amongst the things that are in that increase there. And then the other thing is motor pool. We have old vehicles, and you're gonna be hearing from me, and when we talk capital, the problem right now with vehicles, you can't get them.
That's the
So
problem.
even if you gave me the money to buy vehicles, we have money sitting there from an allocation a couple of
30
years
years.
ago, and we can't get a pickup truck for DPW. And we're not alone, this is a major problem in a lot of the town. But essentially,
Across
our
the
motor pool
county,
costs
it's a
and our
problem.
fire engine in January alone was like, we had almost 20,000, if my memory is correct, just to keep it propped up. Maria's nodding, because that's what I kind of, so I was freaking out a little. I was like, I better jack up Mike's number by another 40 just to make sure we have enough to keep our fleet going until we can maybe get that cushion of money or whatever it's gonna be to help offset some of these expenses, because a lot of our bigger equipment is now
Aged
20
out.
to 30 years old. It's
It
no
is
joke.
aged out.
Our
The other one's
our
fine.
garbage truck as well.
One fire engine and one garbage truck.
Oh, the
I
garbage
just
truck?
wish it would break in half and.
Not the one arm, but we need a
Dump it
rear
in the
loader, a
Raritan.
new rear loader, which we use for recycling and other things, so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so they get old and
They
those are
get,
not.
and they get constantly used.
So this is to keep them up and running. Capital is where we would talk about replacing. So this is kind of a hedge on what I see as a trend working against us. And we have a plan for doing kind of more routine replacements, but unfortunately, police vehicles
We
and,
cannot get them.
and public works vehicles are,
Get them.
and the big towns
Same
get them
problem in the
first.
county too.
So
Maybe
maybe we'll
that's
talk
what
to
they want,
Edison
yeah.
about how do we glom onto one of their purchases. That would
There
be
you
nice.
go.
Talk about an ask. Now, I don't know how you work that, but I would love to talk about that.
You
Yeah.
can set up a meeting.
Just have them ask for 10.
Take it
And
from
we'll
the.
buy,
We
and
pay
promise
for
to
the
buy
two.
for two of
We
them.
pay for the two.
Yeah, because they get noticed when, hey, we've got vehicles, like, by the time we call, they're like, yeah, we don't have them. Emma was just lamenting.
Yeah, 'cause they ordered.
That's exactly.
So those are the main areas
So
there.
that's a shared service opportunity
Yeah,
with them.
potentially, I don't know exactly how to do it, but I think that's one.
We can have the
Emma was
conversation.
just saying, can't we just work with the big
We
town?
absolutely should have that,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a great
Yeah.
one.
And on top of it too.
Okay.
Yes, so
So
fleet,
make
I'm
a note,
writing
yeah,
it down.
fleet, yeah, okay, cool.
Any other thoughts on Public Works, either Matt?
Matt?
Or Hirsch, sorry, I should be more specific.
Hirsch, any, I'm surprised.
Nothing really beyond nothing really, thank you, nothing really beyond, the areas that over, obviously, this is an area that I'm, still absorbing, but, just, having any questions or, Phil, if you want anything else too.
No, I think that, with the high points, we hit.
Okay, cool.
And everybody's favorite topic.
Boards and
It's the
commissions.
smallest drop in the bucket here, although you probably should go back to library and Main Street at some point, but.
No, I wrote it down, I wrote
Okay,
it
good.
down.
I didn't wanna forget
No,
that.
I didn't, that's why I wanted was to
Cause I
insert
do
it
wanna
while we were
talk
on those
about
topics,
the
but.
boards.
Yeah, so boards and commissions,
Yeah.
I will tell you right
The
now,
favorites,
I made
always
no edits
asking.
to what was proposed by the boards and commissions in their request this year. I didn't make it a priority because I had bigger
What?
fish. But Stephanie, this is one of those fish to fry. You gotta factor that, like when you look at how big these asks are. The biggest one, and Jason can speak to it, is the Arts Commission.
Always.
I will give this to the Arts Commission, because Elsie and
Yeah.
I did talk about this. they did spend their money last year,
They
and
did.
they
They
did
spent
a
it.
lot of good programming.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they
So-
continue to do a lot of good programming.
And so the reason I said, you know what, I'm not gonna pitch a fit on this, look at all these other problems I've got in
That
the
are not
budget.
being used.
And Elsie agreed, and
Right.
Jason, I guess, I know you had a meeting about that, so, and Hirsch, you can weigh in, but that was the,
We need it.
you know, in the past, I would have been saying, no way, they never spend it.
They
They
spend
did.
everything.
Now,
And
will
they
they
spend
spend
it
this?
well. They
It
spend it
remains to
well.
be
I
seen,
think you're right.
you know.
They have artists ready to work.
They
Yeah.
will.
We see the work that, the body of work that they have done and what they have created. I'm a strong advocate for letting them have this money.
And the one thing I'll add to is they've learned a lot about how our purchasing works. Before, they would get so hung up that they couldn't spend the money.
Right.
They now know the deal. They've gotten so
Yeah.
much better,
They
haven't
follow
they?
through
Lorraine?
with the
Yeah.
process.
And they
Yeah.
talk to us first before they promise things to the vendors. And it's not perfect, but I will say it's light years better. John has really learned a lot, I will say, on that front.
Mayor, may I add
Sure.
one thing too?
Yes.
The Arts Commission has, intelligence this morning, that the Arts Commission has identified its existing ability to actually fundraise on its own. And that's a really exciting proposition
Awesome.
for them to be able to get out there and generate interest and potentially donation.
Yeah, we do have a trust for arts-related donations already, a previously approved one by the state. So we have to make sure it's all done properly, but yes, if they're willing to put the energy in that, we can support it.
But what's their like big ticketed item? Because I know that one year I had them, they did the Band-Aid bench, that would probably absorb like half of this budget. So is it like
Jason,
a
do you have
big,
their
they
proposal?
usually
I
put like
have
a,
it in here if I can just.
I don't have it on.
Windows of understanding is one of their big things.
They also used, they also were helpful in getting the
oh yeah,
There's the sidewalk thing, the sidewalk thing.
stormwater.
No, the drawings on the
The
of
drawings
going
on
up
the
these
street, on
avenues
Brenner.
with the drawings, the curb cut drawings.
Would you like me to give you the flavor?
Just
Yeah.
like
I
a
have
big
the annotation,
ticket
too, if you
item.
want.
Oh,
Okay,
I
go
just
ahead.
have,
Go
yeah, I
ahead.
just have their budget proposal, but if
Go
you have
ahead,
something else,
Price, you
go
have
ahead.
it.
Okay, well, so what they identified, existing projects that they were, really mobilizing for the revenue. And not that
Well, I
they didn't understanding, there's 1,500, the Gorilla Art Club, which has been immensely successful, 1,000, some of the bigger items. The Highland Mural T-shirts, which they can sell.
yeah,
So
I bought
there's a budget for that as well. And so, I mean, projects ranging from 500 to 1,500, basically.
They're doable.
Uh,
It's not like I'm gonna do a Harriet Tubman statue. And I know you haven't
Yeah.
figured that out.
Community cookbook.
Not that I don't like the idea, but I'm just saying, you gotta plan that. You can't just build a statue
The
in a
community
year.
cookbook is on there.
Yeah.
Community cookbook, I love that.
Me too.
Yeah,
The last
they
one
had
was,
that.
See,
No, they did have
But they're all kind of projects.
but they've
that
evolved.
are
They have
like-
evolved since
We're
your
not gonna
time.
create a huge installation. I hope they get to that point, but we'll get grants to do that.
Okay.
This is to support really initiatives of the group.
Yeah. Smaller projects that they're doing
Right.
over time. Because when I did have them, they had that huge.
Right.
You know, they had like
But they
statues
took
and
big
stuff. That
chunks
was
of
what
stuff.
they were
Now
doing.
they're doing smaller pockets
That was the
that
sculpture
they can
project.
make
Yeah, they had
and
the
move on.
sculpture
Yes,
project
yes.
they wanted to do. They had like themes.
And
so
then
that's
they
why
can
I wanted to
fundraise,
know.
and then they can start to amass
It's
some money.
it's a different arts commission now.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay. To be
Their
fair,
focus is
to be
different.
fair,
You
I
know, in
think-
the past,
I
I've
think
been
so.
equally skeptical. This was the first time I'm like, you know what? They delivered
Remember when
last
you
year.
were working, I didn't even want to give them money for the
They
bandit
really
bench.
did.
Yeah, you guys bring
Yeah, I was
That's
like,
why
you
I'm
know.
sitting here like, are you guys, are this the same people I'm talking to?
Yeah, but those people have evolved and they show their worth and they're doing their jobs and we're seeing the results of that. So
Yeah.
absolutely want to support them. And if
Okay.
you look at other boards and commissions, they've decreased.
The only other two that went up were Shade Tree, and they've been incredibly active, and this is
Oh,
just,
yeah.
all the grant work and all this other stuff. So I can't tell you what exactly that 200 is going toward, but it's well spent. And then sustainable, the only reason that's up so much is we were previously charging adopt-a-drain program expenses and other things related to the stormwater to our stormwater line, and it just makes it a lot easier for finance if all of sustainables goes into their account.
their-
So that's just know that's not new money that they didn't ever have before. That's money we worked through a different line previously. This is more just putting it all in one place so they know
Up one pot.
when Sustainable puts in requests, Nerea and the team know where it goes.
What about Board of Health? Because they didn't use
Like I said, I made no changes. I didn't down, I didn't up.
Tara,
The
I
reason
just-
they didn't use a lot of their money is they were able to get donations for a lot of the stuff that they were giving out. But the people that they got those donations from no longer work at those companies, so now they're gonna have to buy the stuff that they give out.
Like what kind of stuff they give out?
Like they did, the condom program at the high school. They, every year at the, 4th of July, they give out stuff for mosquitoes, information and
The dunks and all those things.
yeah.
The what?
The mosquito dunks, they're like, you put them in standing water and it helps.
And they give out like the, spray and stuff like that. But they were able to get a lot of donations, but those donations have dried up, so now they're gonna have to actually buy those things. But that's why they were able to stay under budget.
Yeah, okay, because they actually sent.
Are they still doing a health clinic every once in a while or no?
Kim is doing something
Yeah,
over.
I know Kim is doing
I
that. I
don't
was
know.
just wondering if they
I don't
still.
know how the
But most of
board
the people on the
relates.
Board of Health are involved in it.
Okay.
Like Norma is doing a lot at it.
And Human Relations too, did they submit, because they only used 200?
I honestly don't even remember, Maria, do
I
you
thought
happen to
they
remember
were.
if they submitted or I just gave
I
them the
don't
same?
know.
Well, Tara can speak to that.
Yeah,
They didn't submit. They forgot to submit.
Are they planning on doing anything that they're gonna need funding for?
It's a board in progress.
so I think, I don't know, that,
Very
I
different.
mean, I guess Stephanie, if we cut them back or not, I don't know that it makes a big difference to
because we
the,
could still at the end of the year.
we can use it to transfer it elsewhere if they don't spend it, so.
And for universal access, they actually were supposed to use 2,000, but unfortunately, there was a mistake with the paperwork and it didn't make it to our last meeting. So
They're gonna spend it this year?
they're going to spend it this year, yes. But they were supposed to, they did have another 1,000 spent. We just didn't get the purchase order taken care of in time.
Okay.
Like I
Perez, you
said-
had a question? No?
No, no, thank you, I'm sorry, no, thank you.
So I guess that, we already kind of, I briefly ran through the situation with grants and when we were on the revenue side of things, so I think you have the gist there, and the capital improvement and debt service, those numbers, I mean, the capital improvement fund, we could do more, we could do less, we've been just kind of holding steady at 100, and Lori and Nerea thought that made sense, just to kind of continue that practice. That builds up basically the money that we can use to fund borrowing of capital, or we can charge smaller projects to that by ordinance through actions. Like when we did a fence one time, we charged the capital improvement fund and we used it in ordinance, and that's how we did it. So that's pretty much, the rest is the money we've already committed to owing, and we're paying it. So,
Paying their bills.
so that's kind of where it all tallies up.
I would just like to go back before we go
Sure.
deeper in the weeds and just
No,
go
I was
back to the
planning to
library
back out of
board.
the weeds, but anyway, it's up to you and what you want to do.
Phil, library?
Oh, yeah.
On the library, the ask was a bit more. Terry did cut that down.
I did take some liberties there just because I was like, there's no way I can cover it. It's going to kill me.
Yeah, you know, if you look at the library budget, now understand, you know, the library is funded a little bit oddly because, you know, the statutory mandate is 1/3 of a mill, which is based upon the overall assessed value. So, and the borough contributes, doesn't necessarily match 50%, but the borough contributes on top
And
of
just to
that.
be clear, the statutory amount is on your first page of your sheet. That 528,201.50 is the one that we don't have anything to do with. It's based on our assessed value, and the state cranks out those numbers and tells us
Right,
what we owe. And then anything over and above that
Right.
is the discretion. And historically, you guys have come, if not double, more than double. Like that,
We
you know,
have,
that
yeah,
has
the
been the
best, yes.
trend. And Phil, I just point out, you know, if you look at I don't know, everybody doesn't have your breakout sheet, but on page 15 of the worksheet, if you have it, it's the sheet that Phil's probably
I have
looking
it.
at.
Yeah.
You can see we were holding them pretty flat for a number of years. Some of you may recall those discussions. So this is the first year where a pretty sizable bump it's less than requested, but more than previous is being entertained.
Yeah, one of the infills was hiring of a librarian full-time staff to bring staffing back up. There's an increase in the executive director's salary, was rising over a couple of years. They account for the bigger bumps. There's some more expense in O&E because we went to the LMX system, which is the electronics. In fact, we had a long conversation about upgrading electronics from people who really understand electronics. And I use that facetiously. But with the upgrades that we had to do with that, also the re-entry into live library as opposed to pandemic library, increased expenses, there's more people working to get overtime elements, not substantial, but all of these increases came about.
And they too have contractual, the majority of the staff are union employees and they have contractual.
Right, so,
just like
we're looking at the raises under the CBA. Terry did cut it rather substantially.
But the other thing is, it can be between OE or salary and wage. That's just, I did a number on page 15, which was just like, I kind of backed into
It's
it.
just one line.
Just because I was like, I gotta hack it down, and it's not my place to say where. And the reason I came to that number, just to be clear, was I took a look at actuals with Nerea and Lori's help to look at where they were and really how much looked to be left in the end of the year, and it was probably around 30, if I'm not mistaken. And just to be clear, when there's a surplus, or not, I guess it's an unexpended amount of appropriation, unlike our other areas of our budget where we can move it from one place to the other, that could get banked by the library in a capital bucket. They have the ability to do that. I probably shouldn't say any more because that's probably about the extent of my understanding of how it works.
Well, I mean, but
Just my point being, I just want to justify the number. I looked at where their salaries were, I looked at that, and that was kind of what my first crack at it. So if anybody wanted to quibble either from the library side or from the council side, there's plenty of room for discussion. I just needed to get that number because the way the rest of the numbers were coming in,
right.
It seemed like a big jump to me.
It's not a sizable jump of the roughly $70,000 increase that remained, but there was never any money for training and programming. So there was a large request to start doing that. But we felt that we needed to do something. Again, to incentivize employees to make a better working environment, to get a better service. And the library over the last year, especially under Kate, really undertook some significant community outreach projects. They had a table at the farmer's market. They put in a miniature Spanish library
So
for
much outreach.
small children
they were
in
really
a laundromat, which is a fabulous idea. So the initial number was.
I balked, so I took some liberties
Took a
with
little,
permission of Phil
but
and Elsie, but
it's the first time they have it in the budget, so they do have something for
it's
that.
5.4 over prior,
Exactly.
after being held flat for a number of years. The one thing, and we had talked about this earlier, that there may be some disruption at the library due
Yes.
to the construction.
But
So
can
there
we
may be
discuss
some
it here?
savings.
Okay.
There may be some savings in part-time staff,
Yeah, and
but I
I
don't know.
think that what we're going to find is a lot of a wash going on here. You have two big things that are going to happen, without talking about what's going to happen with staff or anything like that. We have the state library grant, which we're matching, which is about 900 and change. That has changed a bit because of the costs have risen so substantially. You'll recall this is almost 3 years old now. We lost in the first round, we got the second round, and even then there were already, cost increases. That's one project, and it's going to disrupt the library, and a lot of things we're talking about, like buildings and grounds, they're going to be repairing that, so I'm going to leave that tab open as to what we're going to be fixing, because the grant may do restrooms where we don't have to.
Oh, one thing I should
And,
mention, we are gonna be doing the HVAC, the one that's broken, and then
Right.
that's another buildings and ground item, we're taking that on.
Exactly. The other thing is the potential of the Kushner grant also has some buildings and grounds aspects to it as well as some other stuff. So I think this is a big open tab, and I think the enthusiasm among the board and the employees is really high. It's going, Terry and I were talking the other day and saying, oh my God, we're going to get a really pretty library.
It's gonna be nice.
Yeah,
It's gonna
but
be
it's going to be a while. I think it's going to be 18 months before it all comes together, it's reassembled, and starts to reoperate again. So we want to keep that in mind in this budget. I think we're going to see a radical difference even by the end of the year. We do have to have some conversations about that, I think, more appropriate than possibly in the executive session.
Yes.
Because we have the bid openings on Thursday at 11. I think in 30 days after that, we'll know what we need to discuss.
Absolutely.
Do you think this, I don't know if you floated this new number back to the library?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so, all right.
I think that's a good
Because
idea. Hold on.
if it's gonna be a major problem,
Right.
I gotta introduce,
The meeting schedule is changed a little bit, so the meetings are, through the spring are a little bit closer together, so we'll be able to reassemble that.
but am I
But
gonna be
you're
able to
meeting this
introduce with
Thursday.
this number?
The bid opening for the RFP for the construction for the state library grant is Thursday.
Yeah, but
So
I'm talking about this
close.
number in the
But we
budget.
need to do this for the budget now,
I need
to introduce the budget.
Because once I introduce, I don't wanna make a major change.
If those numbers are problematic for the library, Terry needs to know what needs to be.
Well, we'll get those circulated, and it may be that we have a special meeting, but I think
That
the
would
meeting
come
for
before the
April is
first.
moved up significantly.
Oh,
So
But
it's not.
we're introducing it before.
Well, then we're
We're
gonna
gonna have to have a sidebar.
like really
we'll
moved
we'll
up.
have a sidebar with it.
Special meeting. All right. Okay.
Personally, I think the library should get as much as we can financially and responsibly give them, because they really do a lot for our underprivileged residents.
Economic development.
Just the Main Street budget, is that what yeah, so, as you know, every year the Main Street budget is funded through a business improvement district tax. That goes to the landlords and the businesses on Raritan. The last time that was increased was 2018. The increase in 2018 was about 5%, no, 7%. 7%. So over COVID, there was no increases, so I think a small increase in the bid makes a lot of sense. The economic development, LCA, Terry and I thought that a 3% increase in the bid, which is minimus for most landlords, it's not that much. But at the same time, one of the things that Main Street has taken on is to do a lot more things with SNAP benefits and with farmers market benefits, and making sure that people can use their use those in a variety of different places. And that's a lot of administrative work that Rebecca and the staff have taken on. It's not really a job for Main Street to do. They're doing it because they're the ones on the front lines. So I would like us to contribute more to the grant part of what we give them. We give them $25,000 a year historically, and that's been flat forever as just a supplement to the bid funds. I think if we increase that to $35,000, so we keep the bid tax at 3%.
I thought we were looking at a bid tax of 2.5%.
I thought we settled at 3. I thought we went back and forth to 2.5 or 3.
I thought we were at the 2.5 with the increase. But you continue. I'm sorry. I started.
Okay.
This is
Workshop.
So the difference between a 2.5 and a 3% is
0.5.
No, in terms of actual dollars.
actual dollars.
I didn't run that, unfortunately.
I'm gonna guess
You're right.
that's
It's de minimis. No, go
it's
ahead.
de minimis. It's tiny. I thought we'd come out with 3 and 10, but
This is workshop. That's
I mean, so everybody is facing increased costs, and Main Street is facing increased costs, and so I think that's. I don't want those costs to be on our businesses as much, because they're still hurting. But I think a 2.5 or 3% is acceptable. I'm the most part. The part that I think makes the most sense is that since they are doing more in the SNAP stuff and then more in that we should contribute to that, because that's something that I think is a borough responsibility.
It's about $825 difference total.
Especially.
So
Let's not get crazy about it.
the
I
difference
was
between
just saying, it's a discussion.
I wasn't sure until
But that would
I
be
ran
a
the
board and
numbers.
commission somewhere, 800.
so that $825 difference over what? How many?
But that's part of the special assessment. That's
Right,
the amount
right.
to be raised in the special
That's
assessment.
like $8 a business is the difference between 2.5 and
I'm not sure if that's true, but
I don't know, something like that. Anyway, I would argue for 3% and 10, but
So you're arguing for 3 and 10.
in 10.
I think with us not having a grocery store and with them doing as much as they are to make sure that our residents that don't have means to get to another store can get fresh fruits and vegetables and other necessities, I think that that's more than fair.
And I wholeheartedly second that statement.
But Terry, so I didn't know this about the SNAP stuff. We could have maybe did something with CDBG.
no, it's really the administrative. It's her time.
Okay.
It's time that as I understand it, which is
Yeah.
limited. Because there's other programs that she uses to amplify SNAP benefits. So if
Yes.
you shop there, and you have this other thing that has a name.
I think it's good food.
Good food,
Good
but
food.
Yeah, good
basically
foods.
you get basically $20 extra to spend while
Yes.
you're in the market.
You spend
Right.
20 and you get.
But that's not
more-
the money.
like,
The
you
money
get
she
20,
gets,
you get
it's the
20.
all the
even match.
reporting, all the overhead.
So that wouldn't, I don't know, so that wouldn't
Unless-
fit.
Wait, let her ask the question.
Because I'm thinking, because those grants, that's how we normally like go with benefits flow.
In the future, I think we should think about, I think there's a larger discussion to be had about that kind of service provision and what the best way to do it is. But I don't know if CDBG is the right way because they're increasingly wanting to get us away from staff costs and more towards brick and mortar projects. So, but I think you noted a good point. We were not aware
Yeah.
the amount of effort that goes into just
Yeah.
offering. It's not just signing up one day and now your vendors are in. There's a lot of reporting and oversight that has
I
to-
thought vendors was accepting SNAP.
They
That's
coordinate
just
that. They
what I-
coordinate that for the vendors.
The Main Street coordinates that. makes
Yes,
that
they
happen.
do. Main Street actually does that.
And also
They
with
do.
Main Street,
They sign the vendors up to, the vendors that will accept it, they have a record and they keep that database of who is accepting SNAP and sign those up, and then they match them with this other program called Good Food. So if you have every $10 become another 10, so you have $20. So they're working with those
and
programs.
vendors that don't take SNAP, you go to Main Street, you use your SNAP benefits for $20, you get $40 in tokens. And then you can use that
Almost
in.
like
It's
farmers
a pass-through.
credit.
It's
And
a
you can even
pass-through,
use it
yes,
for food
yes.
vendors, like,
Your
you know,
farmer's
it's not
market
just-
credit, it's a
Oh,
great way of
yes.
saying it.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
just can't use it for hot food.
Yeah, but these, so in my head, like when, because a lot of grants for like low to mod income stuff that we could probably, I didn't know, in my head, I thought it was just another form of payment that was there. I didn't know
Yeah.
this.
I have to
They
get a
have
little more-
modified it
Yeah,
to marry.
I don't know if it makes the borough more eligible for certain programs though, just because of our income, but I think Main Street as a function of the bid, they can.
We'll learn more about
Yeah.
that and
Yeah.
if there's a way we can help make that easier for them, because I don't, one could say,
Yeah.
maybe that's not the best use of their time and maybe there's something we can do to help.
You know,
Or
maybe
something,
that
you know.
admin, the day-to-day might not be the best use of their
Yeah.
time, but more of a publicity and going out recruiting and bringing more business in
But
town.
I don't
that
know
would
what
be
I don't know
more.
on that.
But it all needs to be explored.
But the point of raising it to 10 grand is that right now she is doing the administrative work that causes the SNAP benefits to get spent,
Exactly.
and we ought to contribute to that. Whether that makes sense in the long term, I 100% agree. Maybe that's not the best use of Main Street's time. I can think of other
But the
things.
fact
right
is,
now,
it's
the fact
being
is,
done.
right now they're
They
doing it, so
want
we
to
should
know how
pay
to do
for
it.
Yeah.
And they have the
It's
relationship with the
being
vendors.
done, it can't stop, it has to end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And we should pay for it.
agreed.
I mean, it's more food security, and I'm all about providing more food security for folks.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're going with the 3%, huh? All right. So it's a 3%.
All right,
I'm
But
so-
let's say
okay,
3% with them exploring some grants.
Well,
And
I
that's
was
what
for
I
some
need to
too.
hear. That's exactly what I need to
I
hear.
would-
We'll
I'm
go with the
for
10K.
some
We'll
of
go in
that.
with the 3%. With the idea is that they're going to explore other
Absolutely.
opportunities,
Absolutely.
and we have to have a moving forward stance on how do we create press kits to go out and to sell downtown Highland Park.
100%.
Does Unity still give them that big donation?
They definitely get donations, I don't know how big.
Big is
They used to
relative.
give them a big,
Big,
they used to
big.
give them a big donation.
Yeah, I don't know, but I also now do a lot with the pantry, and they do, so you
They-
need.
Because of this low to mod thing, they get a lot. You have to do like CRA credit for the banks and stuff. So that's what I was saying. It's like different grants and stuff. Maybe you don't know. I don't know. It's a long story, okay. But
CRA
I know
credits. I'm gonna follow up with you on that.
I'm not 100% sure, but
not
I
to take
think
from whoever has
Unity-
food pantry.
I think Unity took some of the money they were giving to Main Street to give to the food pantry and to other.
Because food
Avenues.
pantry will give more credits to the banks. So that's I give to food. We all give to food pantries
Yeah.
at the end of the
So
year.
I
But
think that took
Main
some of
Street
Main
is
Street's
doing
money.
this stuff. That's why I asked. Maybe that's why they like reallocated some. Still giving it, but
I'll
in a
follow up
different
with you
way.
on that.
But
Okay.
But okay, yeah.
Can I have my 3% so we don't
Yes, you can have your 3%, please.
All right.
I'm a
good. I got my
Scrooge, but you
3%.
know,
All right,
I
thank
gotta
you.
watch
I
the
appreciate
money.
it. I know you do. The 3% is where we got.
Okay, so it's 3%, to be
Yes.
clear, it's 3% with the 10K.
With the 10.
With a
Because
30, total of 35. 10.
Total of 35, because they're doing a lot of community outreach
Right.
program and food safety and
yeah,
food
yeah.
security programs.
Agreed.
But should that move away, then we take a stronger look.
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, I'm good now. Anything else?
That's all I got.
I don't want to.
I'm not the only person. Stephanie used to watch the money so hard. Now I'm the one watching the money.
I don't want to leave without. We do have a utility. I don't want to
No.
forget about that.
What is it?
Utility,
Oh yeah.
Water utility.
Oh, was that today?
No, that's
Value
now.
sheets,
Oh.
They're in there. It's
That's
not as
now.
complicated because the spending is pretty
Yes.
straightforward now. Now that we have our operation and maintenance contract, now that we have, so we basically, revenue, expenses are as follows. We buy water, we run the system through our operations, and we pay to process our sewer. That's the large majority, and then the rest of the expenditures are all the things we have to do to keep things running from a day to day, including offsetting some of my time, Nerea's time, staff, programs, software, things like that. So those are the expenses. On the revenue side, we did pass a increase, and what we did, because this year we're under, this was the preference of Lori at the time, because we went with, remember what I said about anticipating revenues that you didn't, because if the state looks at our numbers and we had to, and then we say, well, how can you anticipate more revenue than you did last time? And we would have to say, we did this % increase, blah, 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 blah. We can do that, and I've had to do that before when Renan was here. We had to basically show the state we could close this budget based on approved increases. But Lori's preference was, based on her experience, that it'll be adopted more smoothly as we did have enough surplus to cover the budget, knowing that we're going to regenerate it because we passed those increases. I think it was about 9.5% last year. So just so you know, I didn't want anybody to go, where's the revenue? We just approved. Like, we decided to kind of keep the budget simple for review purposes, which was anticipate what we could reasonably do based on prior year's performance. However, what's not reflected in prior year's performance is a full 4 quarters at 9.5% over. Given that we have such volatility, we decided it would be better to be a little more conservative in how we present this to the state, not really trying to hide anything. It's just a way to go about it where she knows we will regenerate because we passed that increase last year. And we just closed last year by the skin of our teeth because of that increase.
Oh, yeah,
Just
I
to be
remember
really
that.
clear, so it was an absolutely essential.
That was the fourth quarter
We did
when
the
we
fourth
did
quarter
that.
increase.
Mhm.
So I don't wanna, but I wanted to be really clear why we did that, and if you were looking at the revenues going, where is it? It's there, it's baked into the fact that we know we're generate the surplus, which we are going to need in order to do capital improvements and other things down the line. So those are the highlights. This is otherwise a very uneventful
Budget.
budget. The MCUA costs they estimate us every year for whatever reason. Thank you, it was only 4% over. We've had years where that wasn't the case. There's always, every first quarter of the following year is the makeup bill. So every year that can be different. Naraya knows we just paid the one from last year. It was down. I could give you 1,000 theories as to why. One of the ones I like is some of the upgrades we're making and some of the timely response to leaks and things like that are cutting off some of the costs, because what goes out of our pipes in the ground as clean water often finds its way back into the cracks in the sewer pipes, which then goes to the MCUA for processing. And that's called inflow and infiltration, and it's bad, and we're working on it. And there's going to be much more to talk about in terms of capital programming, but that's this budget. It's, I think, pretty much is what it is. I don't think hopefully you don't see a lot of holes in it, because I think it's pretty straightforward. It's not fluff. It's what we need to run the utility responsibly.
Are we anticipating another increase?
Not this year. This
year.
budget does not rely on it. If we have a disaster and for some reason, I don't think so, because I do think we have lost revenue on these meters, and we're in the process of doing the meters. So a combination of the increase you already passed and hopefully more accurate billings will mean we're stable for a little bit.
So everybody that receives that meter replacement, they're most likely not, we're not looking at.
It's not 100%, but what we know is not uncommon. It's not light years wrong, but on the older places where you have a remote on the outside of your house and you have a meter in the basement, when we come and do a routine exchange, just someone, for some reason, they were reading 0 on the outside, and then we realized, okay, the remote's down. We go in and there's usage on the actual meter that wasn't billed because that remote reading was slowing down over time, which your systems aren't going to pick up. Sometimes they just stop, and then we notice, because we go, why did this guy go from 3,000 cubic feet to 0? We go back.
No, but they'll come knocking at your door when they.
So the bottom line is, we will
Not my
be.
meter, I'm saying.
It is our hope that we'll have more accurate billings. That will be. People are we're getting paid for what they're using. It's no more, no less.
Yeah.
And that's what we want. We don't want to bill people for stuff they're not using, and we want to bill them for what they are, because we're all footing this bill to purchase water. And so that's a real cost. So that's all there is. My hope is that was enough of an increase that we're good for a little bit as we stabilize, and we're trying to pick and choose some of the capital projects to address leaks or problems with I&I, give them as much priority as we can. All right. And then the last sheet I sent you guys, and we don't usually talk a whole lot about it, and we have to, it's kind of it's a capital plan, which is based largely on where the department heads are telling me they're seeing things and where I'm seeing things. So we don't have to go through this blow by blow, but it includes, a community center roof. We've been talking about that.
Forever,
You gotta put it
yes.
in your plan. If you don't, you have to, when you go to do a capital program, if it's not in here, there's a whole.
No,
What
we've been
happens,
talking about that
Ryan?
forever.
When if you don't put something in your capital plan and then you need the money, you need to do an ordinance, I think you have to amend your capital plan as part of that. It's like a whole rigmarole. So this is a best guess wish list of what you will have to authorize any of these expenditures via ordinances. So it's not by any means a blank check you're writing to me or anybody other than the departments, but it is at least a statement of the fact that there is a cost ongoing basis of upkeep and maintenance that we have to try to stay ahead of.
The thing I liked about the capital plan is it's front-loaded in the first year. We're having a decent budget year right now. It's front-loaded. There's less going out
Right.
from that.
In
And I
part,
think
that's because I know more about what
and
my
I actually
emergencies
think
are right now.
That's
Yeah, exactly.
now is the time for us to start investing in that.
It's gonna be something.
It's going to be something, and you know, there's certain things that are routines that we know vehicles turn over. So we know that's something we got to just plan on. But other stuff, hopefully, you know, we got a new library situation going on. We got some other things. So we did the track and the turf field. That's a big one that's not on this list anymore. So, you know, eventually we check these things off. Obviously, we have to decide if we can afford it, if we have enough cash, or if we have to borrow. We'll have to make those decisions as we go. Maybe we can get some other funding. You know, we put in some requests for the roof, put in some requests for some other things. So we'll certainly wait till those see how they pan out before we pull the trigger.
I see the police department too. They have some facility upgrades there. A brand new building.
No?
I think the
Is
command
that-
center is a big thing that they have, if
Oh,
memory
you
serves.
mean an incident command center? No, she's
So,
still
are you
upgrade to
talking about the
police building.
911 system?
No, under police. Oh, but that's 2025.
I pushed it off because I honestly
Oh,
don't
okay.
know exactly what that is.
Oh,
So I
okay.
don't remember. I know the chief told me, but I just honestly.
Oh, okay, that's 20.
I pushed it off.
Okay.
But the 911, for example, is going to be something real. That's a, no
What?
way. This 911.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Up system
Oh, yeah, we had a
There's
conversation.
certain
Okay.
new mandates coming out, new systems that have to be
Yeah,
adopted.
they're actually going into place already.
Yeah,
It's a
so it's
change
something we're gonna have to be
Change
prepared.
in frequencies, it's mandated for all dispatch.
Yeah.
We're allowed to phase it in over a certain amount of time,
Yeah.
but it has to be done, and the system that departments all over the state are finding works is, of course, the more expensive one.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, when I was going over it with the chief in our meeting, you know, he was saying, it's a mandate. There are ways to do it,
Unfunded
but it's a
again.
mandate.
Well, of course. Wait, you're telling me that the state puts
They
funds
put
on
these
us?
rules
Rules
and
that we
expect
have
us
to
to
pay
pay
for?
for it.
And they don't tell us about it?
So again,
Wow.
like things like the
Shocking.
fire engine, we have another iron in the fire with the donation, but we're gonna need to buy ours. I just don't, so let's look at the number, let's hope we find another way to fund it besides borrowing, but we'll just have to see what we can do.
Yes.
I mean, there's no two ways about it, they're expensive. And ours are old,
Yep, they are.
30 years.
20-something.
Well, yeah,
Alrighty.
the problem
that's-
with those things is they
You did a
tend,
great job.
they last, but the little things break, and the little things cost a lot of money.
Is there any other discussion?
No, I mean, I guess really, Phil, I want to work with you. The main outstanding thing is the library. I just want to make sure, because if this is okay,
Can I
then
ask
I
you
can, we can actually,
Yeah, I already talked to Roberta, we're gonna set something up.
yeah, I think this should be fine. I really looked at the number and
I
tried to be
believe that it
fair.
is, we had general discussions about the budget. I did tell them, I say.
I think they knew that was a huge
that
lift
Kemp-
for us
oh,
in
they did.
1 year.
Because Sherry was very aware.
The other thing is, because the hiring's taking a while, they've been not paying an executive director pretty much for half of the year. So they'll have a cushion in a couple places beyond what I even already identified. So that's why I feel this is very reasonable.
And again, you have huge, the construction projects you have and the Kushner grant are more than the combined borough, third mill, and contribution in one swoop. There's going to be a lot of crossover in that, and I think we're going to benefit in that, but we're going to have to really coordinate.
Yeah. So that's my only, because otherwise what we'll do is, we'll put these numbers into the official budget documents that the state
I
will be
already,
wanting. And I'll prepare my little dog and pony PowerPoint for introduction.
we were already working on that even before this meeting.
There's one,
for the
just on the PowerPoint, your taxes are going down $750 from.
Number
last year.
one.
Just put that down.
And thank you very much.
Taxes going down.
And
Taxes
now,
going down.
and now let's talk about.
Average micro tax
Your
down.
taxes are going down $800.
Yes.
Now let's talk about the library. Your taxes are going down $800.
Yeah, so agreed, but I just, we'll be introducing, if, you know, basically utilizing what we all talked about here. We didn't make any changes, you know, here, and we'll be putting the materials together for introduction. And you'll have it, you know, it'll be in your packets and all that stuff, and I'll do the PowerPoint and hopefully peppered with questions the whole night long, but no, I'm just, but April
Great.
4th,
Excellent.
all right?
Move for the meeting
All
to
right.
be adjourned.
So moved.
Yeah, I think-
Second.
Any public discussion before?
Oh, yeah, we have
Oh, see, any public discussion? Hold on. See that